On the 22nd of December last year, 3 women returning from a night out were brutally attacked by racists in northwest London. Newsnight has investigated the police response to what was recorded as an extremely violent race hate incident, one of the most serious categories of crime.
When I was in that corner, I was covering my head like this. I was thinking, my son's not going to have a mum, and I'm going to be dead.
We can reveal the police investigation was half-hearted and disastrously slow. One very senior former police officer told me it was negligent, and so far the attackers have evaded justice. Niad Farah grew up in Cardiff but has lived in London for the past 13 years. She works with a charity that helps ex-prisoners. She loves to run in her spare time. On the 21st of December last year, she was out with 2 friends. It was getting late, so Niad's friends decided to stay the night at her flat in Kilburn. All 3 women are of Somali descent. They decided to go to this 24-hour convenience store for some snacks to take home. One of Niad's friends is Swedish and was talking to a friend on the phone in Swedish. We've agreed to protect her identity, so we'll call her Iman.
There was 2 girls in the shop, and I was talking to my friend in Swedish, and the girl said, "Talk English." I wasn't thinking anything of it, but she was standing before us in the queue, and she started making comments.
And I remember there was two girls, and one of them said to my friend, "This is F in England, speak F in English."
Iman left the shop, leaving her 2 friends inside.
One of the girls came out and punched me in my face.
She punched you in the face? As Niad went to help her friend, she heard shouts from the other side of the road. She says a group of 7 white men had emerged from a parked van and were approaching. Niad wanted to show me what happened next from the safety of my car.
When they crossed the road and they got out of the van, I was punched on the side of my head there. And so they punched me and I fell on the floor right where the vegetables were. And then, I'm just trying to catch my breath. And then my friend was on the floor there in front of me, and she was being beat up, so I got up, tried to comfort her, and then they dragged me into the doorway.
It's incredibly raw for you, obviously. I think we should probably drive off. Niad says the van was dark-coloured with a sliding door on the side, and the man leading the other 6 had balled his fist and was shouting racist abuse at her.
He's just like, he had his fist like this, like, and he was like, F, F, F. And I remember I just took my arm off my friend and I was just like, what? And then the other one came, the one that was very smartly dressed, he was behind him, and then he punched me there. And I remember I fell on the floor.
All 3 women were being punched. Niad was kicked unconscious.
All 7 of them was around us. And then I remember the one with, that was smartly dressed with a black jacket. He pulled me to a doorway.
That was the doorway next to the shop, was it?
Next to the shop, yeah. He pulled me in the doorway, and then he was stamping on me, and then I was doing this, and then...
And you were on the floor at this
I was on the floor in that doorway, and all I did was, I was like, at that point I thought, I'm dead, I'm gonna be dead. And then I did this, and then I can see through like here and there that I was being kicked. I remember there was 4 different types of shoes, because when they were kicking me, I can see the shoes that were hitting me. And then one of them held the railing and I was like being stamped on. And then there was kicks coming every angle of my body, and I was just curled up on the floor like that. I remember one of them came to kick me further, and he was saying, "Oh, these are not, these are." So yeah, that's those were the words that I clearly remember. Yeah.
The only thing I could see when I stood up was that her eyes was rolling back.
So you saw her eyes roll back in her head, and she was being dragged into the doorway of a shop.
Yeah, and still being kicked when they dragged her to that place. They dragged her from one place to the next place to still kick her.
What did you think about that?
I thought we're gonna die.
I was punched side of my head there.
Bob Quick has 32 years' experience of dealing with violent crime. He was head of specialist operations at the Met, and before that, Chief Constable of Surrey Police.
And then my friend was on the floor there.
This was an attack of extreme violence. This is indicative of people who are a public menace and need to be identified and brought to justice. An incident of this nature could quite legitimately have been described a critical incident. It had potential to really impact on community confidence. It was a serious crime in its own right, and it was compounded by racial motivation, the evidence of which is clear.
I remember that I looked in the mirror in my bathroom, and there was all blood pouring down my face. I had it all over my my coat. My hands were all full of blood. And then I was doing this to my head, and I remember as I was doing that, I put my finger in a hole, and my finger about that much went into my head, and then I realised that I had a hole in my head.
Her friends had called 999. 2 constables responded to the call. After 40 minutes waiting for an ambulance, Nihat says she persuaded the policeman to take her to hospital. Nihat's head wound was sealed, and she had a scan and was put on opioid pain relief.
And then I woke up, and there was 2 police officers next to me and my 2 friends.
She says one of the officers started to question her about what had happened.
Was you buying anything off them? And I was like, no.
Was he implying that you were trying to buy drugs?
He was literally just implying that we knew the guys, that we were buying stuff off them, that it was almost impossible for a racist attack to happen in that area. And it was the repetition of the questions. I felt like I was being interrogated.
By their account, that does imply the officers at the scene were working on some sort of assumption that they either knew the perpetrators or were in some way engaging with them, maybe buying drugs or whatever. If that's true, then that's inexcusable. The police absolutely have a duty to be objective and not to jump to conclusions.
So did racist assumptions undermine the police investigation? The women say they did. The Met denies the claim. We can't be sure if wrong assumptions hampered the investigation, but what we do know is that it was fatally flawed by a series of basic mistakes after this.
The response seems to have been pretty woeful. You would have expected this to be prioritised immediately by the senior officer on duty and for standard operating procedures to apply. And that would mean officers at the scene, freezing the scene so that a scene management exercise can be undertaken for searching for any forensic clues. Who knows what may have been dropped by a suspect. For all we know, one of the suspects may have had an injury and left blood at the scene.
It's essential to act fast in a criminal investigation to preserve evidence. This is known as the golden hour.
It's a very busy high street. There would have been lots of opportunities to recover CCTV imagery, which may have identified some of the perpetrators or the vehicle that was described by the witnesses and the victims that the suspects made off on. So there were lots of opportunities really to solve this crime, and it's not clear to me that they were taken.
On the 13th of January, I came here down Kilburn Lane looking for CCTV evidence. It's what the police should have been doing before Christmas. I found this camera here attached to the greengrocer shop overlooking the attack location. Now, if the police had come before Christmas, they could have got vital evidence, because this camera might have caught the men crossing the road and attacking the three women. No effort was made to recover CCTV from neighbouring shops until the new year, and by then the footage had been recycled, overwritten by new material. And it's unclear if there was any investigation into whether there were links between the original two women and the men in the van. And the van itself was not traced. Niad says she had to chase the police to make a statement after one officer told her it would not be necessary.
He said to me, oh, we have no evidence, no CCTV camera, absolutely like no line of inquiry, so therefore we can't take no statements off you. So basically there's nothing that we can do for you at all.
That is extraordinary though, because the statements from you and your friends, that would have been crucial evidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
After Niad insisted, the police did take a statement, but not until 2 months after the attack. No statements have ever been taken from her two friends. The two PCs who'd first attended the crime scene said they passed the case over to Westminster CID in December, and it was CID that decided not to pursue it.
They said we left it for them when we went off for Christmas, and they've left us details to basically say that it wasn't going to be a CID case because my injuries weren't severe enough, so they passed it back to us. So I said to him, I asked him a question, and I said, so what injuries do I need to sustain for it to be taken seriously? I said, do I have to be dead?
We asked the Metropolitan Police about the women's allegation that they'd been racially profiled as black women on a night out buying drugs. The Met told us,
this line of questioning should not be considered as an officer making any assumptions or doubting the account given by a victim, and we refute any suggestion that this is what happened in this case. Our officers always keep an open mind as to the circumstances of any attack and must build an understanding of the facts. From a very early stage, this was treated as a serious, racially aggravated assault committed by people unknown to the victims.
We also put our questions about missed opportunities to the Met. In an extraordinary admission, a spokesman told us that the attack could have qualified as a critical incident and mistakes were made.
We accept that this particular incident should have been escalated and prioritised at an earlier stage. There was a delay in the necessary follow-up inquiries being made just after the incident, and this hindered the subsequent investigation. This shouldn't have happened, and we are sorry for letting the victims in this case down. This was an appalling attack which should have been investigated with greater urgency.
For Niad, the last 10 months have been deeply traumatic, and she still can't bear to return home. For now, it seems, her racist attackers have got away with it.
I have zero trust in the police now, and they didn't help me when I was most in need. I've had to live with the trauma of not knowing that I'm never going to get justice because of their incompetence and them just not taking my case serious.
The perpetrators of this crime, clearly represent a danger to the public if they're prepared to use that type of violence and if they are particularly motivated by race. So I would have expected significant resources to be allocated to this investigation and for a determined search and a determined pursuit of all the available leads.
In response to Newsnight's investigation, the Metropolitan Police admitted it failed Niad and her two friends. The case is being reopened with a senior detective in charge. But the police now say mistakes and delays were so serious there's no guarantee of justice. And 10 months on from the attack, the gang of violent, racist men are still free.